Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
Infinite complacency. People went to and fro of the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Into the Fray. If you're new to the show, welcome. If not, welcome back. Either way, if you guys could all do me a little favor and head over to your podcatcher of choice and rate and review the show. And I also wanted to give a quick hello and a shout out to my brand new patrons over at patreon.com. Corey, Angelica, Alien God 55, Ronnie, Brady, Brian, Nicholas, Matt, Clyde, Alexis, Troy, aka Tony, Andy, and Brittany. Welcome over, guys. And if you enjoy ITF, you can head on over to patreon.com and check out the 4 different pledge levels. There's everything from, of course, early episodes, bonus audio and video content, signed books, stickers, live chats, and more. Again, head over to patreon.com/intothefray. Before we jump into this week's episode, I wanted to wish a happy, belated 25th birthday to Yami Gonzalez. She is, of course, the host of Cryptid Chat Girl. So go on over to wherever you find your podcasts and check her out. Happy birthday, Yami.
My story isn't going to reinvent the Bigfoot wheel by any stretch, but I just think they're kind of cool stories, and the backstory of how I came to find Bigfoot in my backyard, I think is kind of cool.
You don't have to worry about that with me. I think all of that is fascinating as far as anybody being able to see these things is pretty darn incredible. So you're in Texas now because you're working, but are you still living in Ohio?
Yes. I know you did some time in Ohio. I'll give you the county. I won't go much more than that because all this took place on private property.
Oh yeah, that's no problem. You know, that's never a problem.
Of all places, Clark County. If you're familiar with the
Clark
Southwest
County.
corner.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird how this whole thing played out. I've always been fascinated with the Squatch phenomenon. I'll be 56 next week, so I go back, as a lot of folks do, to the days of In Search Of, and it just kind of piqued my interest. And even as a 10 or 11-year-old kid, as much as I was fascinated by it and the Yeti and whatever, I was like, yeah, I'm in Ohio. That is never, ever going to happen for me. So, I just kind of hoped and wished that one day I would be able to get to the Pacific Northwest where all the Squatch were and, just see what happens. But with the advent of Facebook, I just got curious. So I just threw in Bigfoot into the search. And I came across this Facebook page that actually was based in Ohio, the Janasqua group or project, or I can't remember exactly the name. And the guy that started the group was actually in Seth's film, The Minerva Monster. It was Paul Hay. So that kind of piqued my interest. And, people were having, they were sharing some interesting things in Ohio. I was like, all right, maybe there's a shot here. But I also got familiar with the BFRO website way back in the early 2000s. In Clark County, there's only 3 recorded incidents, and 2 of them are sketchy at best. So I kind of blew it off. I really didn't take stock in that. The third one, they called him the Wild Man of Enon. That somebody saw him walking in a field, and apparently he was well known. But I grew up in the area, so that was new to me, and it was literally 6 miles from where I grew up as a teen. But to get back to how I started looking in my backyard, they were always talking about the first podcast I ever listened to on the subject was Monster X with Shane and Gunner. I got into that group as well, and I just threw up a comment. It was like, well, I'm living in Ohio, I'll never see this thing. Well, somebody got back to me right away in Messenger and says, you would be surprised. And I was like, okay. And I was already familiar with this woman. I don't know if you know her or not, but she was an admin on Monster X. Also has done some radio work on the podcast. And I think she has one of her own now. I don't know if I could share her name or not.
Is it either Shelly or Julie, maybe?
It's Julie. It's Julie. And she's like, just poke around in your backyard, give it a shot, see what happens. It was like, yeah, all right, what the hell? So I, just started goofing around, and there was let me try to set the scene for you. I lived in an apartment complex at the time, and to the west of the apartment complex, which would be behind it, is a condominium complex. Now, to the south of the apartment complex is a real small wooded area. And I'm using the term wooded lightly because it's southwestern Ohio. It's not a heavy growth, old growth kind of deal there. But behind that was a farmer's field, and that bordered the condominium back there. And go back even further, and there is a creek that runs that really only has flowing water in the fall and winter months. In the summer, it's pretty much dried up. So, I just started, just doing the wood knocks and, silly things like that. I say silly, but it ended up that I didn't even have to do that. And I would hear pacing off into this little wooded area. And that's kind of how it started. I would hear bipedal, which, there are deer and whatever, but this thing was very light on its feet, even in the leaf litter, but you could hear it. It'd just walk off to my right, turn around, and walk off to my left, about 30 yards into this wooded area. So that went on for a little bit, but I got home early enough one afternoon that it was almost dark. It was late October, early November. It was almost dark. So I just walked back over, into the back corner there of the apartment complex and just standing there, just looking around, had a smoke. There was, along this fence line, because I'd walked back there, is like a gully or like a little washout, but it's canopied. Everything hasn't completely fallen off the trees or the bushes yet, so it's kind of canopied. But there was a guy over there that had a commercial leaf blower, gas powered, and this thing just making 9 kinds of noise. I was watching over along that fence line, and something in there was pissed off. It was just, you could see everything shaking. It was just pissed. I stood there and I was like, this is different. this guy was oblivious to what's going on. He had his headset on, to protect his ears, and I don't blame him. That damn thing was loud. I watched this thing kind of work its way up that little washout, and everything was just shaking. You could tell that it was upset about that noise. And it was just getting dark enough. And I was at the entrance where I could, where I have walked in before and gone down through there. When this thing come up and there's a little hill, just a little hill, just an easy step for any Squatch, if in fact this is what this was. And this is where I think I had a class B+ sighting. I can't really verify it as an A. But whatever it was, come up on top of that hill and just filled up that opening and stopped. And I thought, holy hell, that was incredible to me. And the hair stood up on my arms, and it didn't do anything. It didn't move. But when it topped that hill and it saw me, it froze. I wish I could give you some details on the features, but it wasn't small. It was definitely not small. It filled up that area. And I was like, okay. I think I'm going to go in the house right now.
Right? You're like, okie dokie. How far was he from the leaf blowing guy?
Well, this one condo kind of catty cornered in back to the corner. He probably at one time, by the way, it looked like he was working himself up, could have been as close as 20 or 30 feet at one point, but he started to come toward me. So the distance was kind of growing between him and this. So he ended up more, like I said, more in front of me. But when this thing, like I said, it worked its way up, that it was pissed off until it got to the top of that hill. And I'm sure it obviously saw me because it just froze. And well, I did too.
So leaf blowing guy, I mean, he didn't even have any clue how close he was to needing a pair of brown pants. I mean, at one point he would have been very, very close to it had it stepped out.
If it would have crossed that fence and it was just a basic 3.5, 4 foot farm fence that separated the condo from the farmer's field. In fact, it was probably the farmer's fence. But, I mean, if it wanted to, it could have easily, come through that little wire and really effed up the guy, frankly. But, it just, like I said, it just worked its way up that wash. And if it would have been 20 minutes sooner, I could have probably given you a detail, but.
Right. It was almost dark. Right. What else is around there? Kind of, if you're swooping up and out, you said there was basically that's a small wooded area, but talking maybe, I don't know, 20 square miles. What else do you have out there as far as cover for something like that?
Well, I did go out throughout the months and look around. The way this is set up, like I said, the wooded area, the farmer's field, which isn't a giant field, but it's very secluded. There's one way in and one way out to this field, and it's at the other end. And then off that field is a grassy area, which is fairly wide, might be a little swampy, patchy area back there that I tried to stay away from because, stepping something like that, you might not get out. And then the creek, and then across the creek is another wooded area, very much larger and even more secluded than where I had all my encounters. But I had gone back in there on that other side of the creek. The only way to get there is to go back through the condominium complex, cross the little stream where it comes through their property in concrete, and then it opens up to the actual creek once it leaves their property. So I had to go completely around to get to the other side. Now, this one Sunday, I did it on a very nice Sunday afternoon. Probably, it wasn't real cold, so it was still probably mid to late November, I would say. On that leaf litter, it's hard to be quiet, especially if it's dry. you're just gonna make noise. So as I was starting in, I kicked up something just out of the corner of my eye. All I can tell you is it was dark. It was kind of a black color, and I heard it hit the water. And it just basically like it just dove into the water. I heard the leaves kick up, splash, and not another sound. It's like, oh, okay, that was interesting. Whatever it was just came to a complete stop in the creek. So I kind of worked my way up, got to, around this area where I saw it, out of the corner of my eye. Again, can't describe it, just a big blob splash. And so I kind of worked my way up that way, was kind of looking around. There's a little opening that kind of dropped down. So I thought, well, I'm just going to, sit down here for a little bit and, see what happens. I never heard anything, never at that particular point, never heard anything, never saw anything, but I got the feeling that I wasn't alone. Not that I was in danger, just got the feeling I wasn't alone. As long as I was in that area, that's where I had that feeling. I just felt like that something's there. But I hung there, I don't know, 25, 30, 35 minutes, decided to go back deeper into the woods and look around. And I'm going to have to see if I can find some old pictures that I took. It's just a very wide open area that, looked like nobody had ever been in, at least in recent months and years. Got to looking around, found a couple of interesting things. There was, I don't know if I'd label it as a tree structure or not, but there was a branch that was coming away from a tree that was kind of propped out. It started at about 7 foot in the air. Branch was probably 10 or 12 feet long, and it angled down to the ground. And at the bottom, it looked like somebody was taking little sticks and just kind of going up the slant as it went up, even with that, maybe 5 or 6 sticks up. And I was like, that's kind of interesting, but that could be anything. One little, and I don't even know if I can call this a structure or not, but by the creek, there were little branches that looked like they were interwoven around one that was in the ground, that was like a tree that was in the ground, but they were small, very pliable, but it was just kind of interwoven. And it was like, okay, that's kind of cool too. Again, I really can't explain what did it, but just little things like that. But I found an area along back in that other wooded area, way back against a fence that went to somebody else's property. So there's a lot of private property back there. And, I shouldn't have been there, but, I was curious. I wanted to know. But the way this looked would have been an easy place for anything to go in and lay down, because the way the bushes were at this fence line, they were like canopied over, and underneath was wide open, for maybe 5, 6, 7 feet, and anything could crawl back in there and lay down. Anything could. And I thought that was weird. I've never ever seen anything quite like that either.
Ed, did it look like something had gone in there and kind of moved things around and scooped out anything to make the room, or was it just a naturally occurring space, do you think?
I really couldn't tell that anything had been in there, digging around, but it didn't look like anything was putting anything in there. But with all the leaf litter that was already there, who's to say that it couldn't have been soft enough for something to crawl in there, I really can't quite answer that question. I just thought it kind of weird that, I grew up in the country, not so much necessarily in the woods as much as I wanted to be, just coming up on something like that for a good length of a farm fence. And it just kind of struck me as odd. I think I have a picture of that I'll go through later. it was interesting, but that kind of walk back through there was uneventful. I was hoping to get something on, getting some movement on that side of the creek because I knew what was on my side.
Now,
that was the only time I'd ever.
Sorry, Ed, before you go on, and I forget, it's kind of a two-part question. First one would be what year did all this start for you, and then how populous is that, or was that area at the time?
I can't call it suburban. In my immediate area, I can't call it totally rural either because I lived on a major state route coming out of the county seat.
Mm-hmm.
So there was traffic all the time right there on that state route. A lot of county roads, township roads that encircled that got you out into the country a little further. But this particular area, it's more country than suburbia would be. But on that state route, there are plenty of houses.
Right.
So
yeah, like I'm in a Clark County, but a very different Clark County than that one. So and
right.
So what year did this all start for you?
My pictures would tell me more because of when I took them, maybe 6 years ago.
Okay.
Possibly 7, maybe 6 or 7. I was trying to think of the exact date earlier because I knew you were going to ask.
No, that's okay. I'm not that kind of person that can just tell you the month and even sometimes the year of when something happened. And that's just how I am. So that's okay. No, continue. Thank you.
But yeah, it's secluded when it needs to be back there. I mean, let me put it that way. But yeah, to get to some of my encounters, of course, that one wasn't enough. Like I said, I would go out there almost nightly. Some nights were benign, and all you heard was footsteps. I went out there one night with a flashlight, and I never did it again. I knew something was out there, and because I could hear the footsteps, and I hit the flashlight, and I heard the chatter and talking about brown pants. I turned the flashlight right back off, and it was like, okay.
How much of it did you hear?
No. It just real quick, because it was basically telling me to turn the damn thing off.
Yeah, they were not happy with you.
It was not happy.
How
it didn't go away.
Did it seem super loud? Like it was quite close?
Yeah, it's typical, 15 or 20 yards inside that tree line. So yeah, this thing never ever got aggressive, never ever got territorial. I think we kind of come to an understanding that we're both curious about each other at this point. So like I said, no more flashlight. I was done. I was like, okay, we're good.
But even after you shut it off, it continued to chatter at you a little bit until you went inside and were still hearing it?
No. As soon as it chattered until I shut the light off,
okay.
And then it quit.
Oh.
It was more of a scold. It was like, come on, dude. So, but I'd go out there 15, 20, 25 minutes at a time, maybe 4 or 5 times a night. If something's going on, I'll hang out there a little longer. If it's, just doing its normal, which more times than not, I just heard it walking. Went out there. I started to believe that there was, and again, I can't verify any of this, of course, and I can't say 100% sure that I had Squatch out there, but I will go 95% sure because I went out there one night, and I remember this night in particular. It was a Friday night on Thanksgiving weekend. It was about 10 o'clock. It was a light rain, and I had a jacket with a hood up. Wife hears this, she's going to shoot me in the face, but she was in a bit of a tiff. So I just, was like, okay, I'm going to go outside for a while. So I walked out and also learned a lesson that night too. I walked out and I walked right up to the edge of the tree line And at my feet, I heard this guttural growl that went right through me. I flipped my hood off so I could hear it better. And literally, Shannon, it was at my feet inside that tree line. It was like, okay, all right, tonight you win. I'm going back in the house. I'll come back out tomorrow night. It just, you could feel it. It just freaking went right through me. I was like, okay, all right. That was interesting. That was, you win. I'm out. So, I went in and told the wife. She's like, you're kidding. I was like, no, that thing, I got too close that time. As the story goes, you'll understand why I got a little close. So at that point, I learned to keep my distance. So when I would go out, I would stay 20, 25 feet back away from the edge of the tree line. Give it its space. If it wants to get curious, I'm going to let it. But that night, it told me I was a little too close. One night I went out there, and no sooner than I got out there and I turned the corner, I heard a knock off to my left. And immediately in front of me, I heard a whistle. Now, it wasn't my three sons' whistle, but it was a whistle. That's a throwback to one of your shows.
Big high five on that, yes.
But it whistled at me, and it was just a quick, and I whistled right back, and I got another whistle in response. And then it realized that I wasn't who it thought I was, and I got more chatter. So what I believe was I had a female with a juvenile, and I was used as the training tool for the juvenile. It's like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, he's cool, but you need to get to know what this dude is. That's kind of the way I took it. It was like, oh, okay, that's kind of weird. It blew me away. Every hair on my body was standing on end. As soon as I got that whistle response back, and I whistled, and oh my God, I couldn't believe it. Sometimes we'd hear howls that didn't sound quite right. I know you've heard that before. There was a lot of coyote back there, but sometimes you could hear the coyote, but you heard something that just didn't sound right with the coyote.
Right.
And that happened a lot. Even the wife commented on that. She's like, that just does not sound like the typical coyote. And it got to the point to where she wouldn't take a dog out if it was dark, even 100 yards away from the tree line. She's like, I ain't doing it. Here, take this leash. If it was daylight, she wouldn't care less. But at night, she's like, no. You told me what's back here. I think we're done here.
That chatter situation, the second round, did it sound exactly like the first round of chatter that you had when you had the flashlight on?
Pretty much. It really didn't sound that much different. But like I said, when I've gone out there before, I've never experienced a knock as in, a possible warning indication, I guess, or is the way I took it, because as soon as I turned the corner and I wasn't even to the grass yet, I got the knock off to my left, got the whistle in front of me. I responded, got the whistle back, and then I got the chatter. And it really did sound really similar to the first time when I practically, I shined the light in its eyes. So yeah, it was a pretty intense little situation there.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool little encounter, actually. Especially since, like you said, you think that it realized that the sound that you made back, it's going, wait, you're not one of my kind. What are you doing talking to me? Now,
right.
That growl that you got Thanksgiving weekend at your feet, you hear a lot of times people say that they could feel it just as much as they could hear it. Was that the situation with yours?
Oh yeah, it went right through me. It literally went right through me.
Was there any pain associated with it?
No, it was like, you've been coming out here enough. You're too close. Back up a little bit. Is the way I took it, because I was literally, like I said, wife was in a bit of a huff. I just wasn't feeling it, so I just went marching my happy ass out there, and I uncharacteristically walked up to the edge of the tree line, which I really wasn't doing that. I was staying back, and I just walked up there, and I don't even know if I have smoke lit at that point yet. That growl was literally right at my feet, and it literally went right through me. And I took it as, you need to back up. And that was before I got the whistle. So I started putting, at least in my brain, 2 and 2 together, that she was okay with me being out there, but she didn't want me that damn close. She wanted me to give her space. I don't, of course, we don't know what the mating ritual of a Squatch is, or the gestation period or any of that stuff. None of us are experts. So I don't know if she was, possibly in the process of giving birth or what have you. Going back to that field real quick, we had a pretty wet fall that year. So when I was back there one afternoon, of course, I didn't have my phone with me. I didn't get a picture of this one. I saw what could have been identified as a very small footprint in the mud. And this, very soft ground, because it was plowed up, but it went down, 3 or 4 inches. And it was about to rain. I didn't have my phone. And I knew that, by the time I went and got the phone and got back, that it'd probably be full of water. And then, what am I going to do with that? But that print was only, maybe 5 or 6 inches long. There damn sure wouldn't have been a kid out there walking around barefoot.
How defined was it?
Not in a farmer's field. Huh?
How defined was it? Did it have the toes and the whole thing going on?
It already had a little water in it, so I really, the definition was already going away, but it looked like just a 5-toed foot at that stage. It just looks like a child's foot. The day after I got the whistle play back and forth with whatever it was, I'll try to stay objective here. The next day I happened to be off work, and there was some snow on the ground. So I went out to that area during the day to look around. And I was trying to figure out what or how or where this actual knock would have came from, because there aren't that big of trees up at that point, at that part. They're really not. And it sounded like where this came from, there just weren't any trees that size. There wasn't anything laying on the ground that could have been used to smack a tree. But I was listening to one of your shows today, one of your older shows, and somebody, maybe it was a mouth noise, maybe it was a chest thump. It was kind of weird. When I did go out there looking around the next day, I found a couple, and the snow had already started doing its thing, but it looked like something had been standing there still with, just kind of with its legs apart. And that's pretty much where I thought this knock would have come from, or noise, or whatever we're going to classify it as, came from. I was staring at it, and I kind of spread my legs out, and I wasn't even close. This thing was probably another 1.5 to 2 foot straddled to get to where these 2 prints were. And I'm going to call them prints, but I really can't prove that they were.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the way they were and where they were. I have, seen things that appeared to be prints in the past, but with the previous night's incidents, I can't say for sure, but that's what it looked like. it was an interesting series of a few months back in there. The last major event, I'd go back there so much in this area. You're looking through the trees. You do it on a nightly. You get to know every security light back there. You just get to know it. You know if you're looking at a star, you know which security lights. And I went out there one night, and I was just, it was quiet, and I started looking around, so and so, just kind of counting the security lights, and I saw this one that to me seemed out of place, and and I kept staring at it. I was like, did somebody put one up? Is it a new one or what? So, I was out there maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, wasn't hearing anything. Wasn't even hearing the typical walking back and forth like I normally would have. And this was about 9 o'clock. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go in for a little bit. I'll come back out later. Came back out at precisely 10, and that light is still there. And I was like, it's not supposed to be there. Something doesn't seem right. And just out of my reaction, I started to get more animated to maybe I'll see a branch drop down in front of it, just something to satisfy my curiosity. Well, my movements must have been exaggerated enough that this, what I thought was a light, ended up being one eye shine, and it dropped straight down and then curved off to my left to the ground and disappeared. And I was like, holy hell. I couldn't believe what I just saw. That was the first time I'd ever experienced anything similar to eye shine. And I was like, that just did not happen. There's got to be some explanation. Of course, try to be the little truck driver scientist. I was thinking owl, but I never heard a sound. And because it came straight down and moved off to my left and then just disappeared, struck me as odd. So the next day I went out there, I started looking around, and there was a tree there right at the corner of the wooded area, the pretty big tree where this happened. Walked around and came in behind so I didn't disturb anything. And it looked to me like something had been standing there for quite some time. Leaf litter, again, it's hard to tell by, seeing an actual print, but it was packed down. And I really couldn't tell you, Shannon, how long that thing stood there. But there was no branch on that side of the tree. So I quickly ruled out an owl. There was nothing there for anything to perch on. And I kind of gauged, standing there, at how far up this was. And that eye shine was at about the 7.5 foot mark. It just kind of blew me away. But, I think it was content to just stand there and watch me all night until I started to get a little animated with my moves.
I mean, it is weird that it did that after you got really animated. And, of course, the thought is that it was probably, it's doing its tree peeking thing at you, right? That's why you only saw the one eye.
Right. And I think it realized then that I knew it was there. And that's why essentially it just laid down. Is the way I took it. It dropped straight down to my left and gone. So they get on all fours all the time, from other reports. Why wouldn't it just lay on its belly?
Right. How quick was that movement that it made?
Oh, it was fluid. It wasn't fast, but it was fluid. It was just came right down to my left and down. It took maybe 2.5 seconds, and without a sound, it was gone. It just that fast. And I was like, whoa. that was kind of cool.
So that was basically the culmination of the incidents. You didn't hear any knocks or whistles or anything after that?
I never really did hear, except for that one time, I never heard a knock. And except for that one night, I never heard a whistle. I got to chatter with the flashlight. I got to growl because I was too damn close. It was, for the most part, not noisy. It really wasn't. I can't explain, anything past that, but it wasn't necessarily an attention seeker. I think it was just curious, just like I was. Not that I carried a lot of knowledge away from the situation, except, don't walk up to the tree line and don't shine your damn flashlight in the trees. But yeah, it was, Julie suggested it and I did it. And she even come out and, kind of investigated the area a little bit. And me and her husband kind of walked back in there one afternoon, and, nothing really stuck out to us. Showed her a couple of things, a tree break that I found. When I first started going back in there, this tree was fine. And then like a week or so later, I went back in there and this tree had been broken with, no apparent reason I could see as to why it was broken at about 6.5 feet up on the tree. The tree was probably, I don't know, maybe 2 inches in diameter. Not giant, but more than I could break. And the odd thing about that was it was broken towards the apartment property where I was. Just like, and I could tell it was fresh. Obviously I couldn't see what did it. I'm not going to speculate there, but it's just weird that it was a fresh break and it pointed toward where I stood. And, so I don't know if that was, whatever tree breaks mean.
No, that's cool. I mean,
yeah,
especially with Julie to come out like that. Julie Wrench, she's awesome. It's cool that you got to meet her. I never have. Now, Ed, with you living in an apartment complex, did you notice anyone taking notice of the situation besides you?
Not really, no. It got to be kind of a joke with me and the younger boys. Well, my boys were younger at the time, I should say. It got to be kind of a joke. Oh, Dad's going out Bigfooting again in the backyard. It was like, well, yeah, I guess I kind of am. But I let a couple people know, and they, in that apartment complex right there where I would go out at the corner of this one building was a good friend of my son's. And kind of got to talking to his dad one day, and he's like, yeah, he says, I've heard some weird shit coming from back there. He says, I don't know what it is. He says, and I ain't going back there. He says, but it's some weird shit. It's like, okay, all right. But past that, no, nobody, not even a second thought. I have a friend that's a deputy sheriff in the county, and I've been meaning to pick her brain for years over this, but I don't even know if she'd talk.
Right.
If she knew anything, I don't even know if she'd talk.
Right. Yeah.
And we've been friends for 40 years. So, who knows?
Even off the record, sometimes they won't talk. So even if they're 100% sure that no one else is listening, it's a tough situation for them to open up about that. So.
Right. And, I get it. I never made fun of anybody for what they believed or why they believed it. Some of it, sounds kind of weird and kind of far-fetched, but that's their experience, not mine. That series of months was just, I'm glad it happened. It kind of taught me a couple of things about, how I should approach anything in the future whenever I get the chance to get off the road and do it again. But yeah, it was definitely well worth it. And if it wasn't for the prodding of Julie, I wouldn't even have had it. But speaking of Julie, I kind of turned her on to a guy I knew who had his own experience not far away from there. She ended up hooking up with him and going out and investigating his his series of events, he actually saw his. You know, the steel poled swing sets that we had when we were kids?
Absolutely.
He said he saw it one night that was towering over the top of these swing sets. You know, it's
my
six
gosh.
and a half feet.
Uh-huh.
So this thing was 8.5 feet tall, according to Jeff. And it hung around his place for several months itself. Jeff would go out during the day and look around. He come across deer legs that were laid in a row, which I thought was odd. It was like, okay, well, I never found anything like that. That's kind of cool. But yeah, Julie spent the day out there and came across this barbed wire fence, and Julie found a hair in the barbed wire, and she had it sent off, and it came back as a known, but it came back as a known for a critter that allegedly hasn't been in that area for nearly 100 years. It was a bobcat.
Mm.
If nothing else, she got that out of it, to prove that there's a bobcat back in the area.
That's still very cool, though. Yeah, as something that hasn't been there for 100 years. That's really cool.
Right. There, there's bobcat in the state, just not in our corner. So they're working their way back down.
Now, Ed, do you know the time frame for the gentleman's sighting? Over the swing set and all of that, because yours, you say ran somewhere from like October to April, right? And then it stopped. Do you know the time frame for his sighting and activity?
It really wasn't. The way it sounded to me, it really wasn't that different from my time frame. It started mid-late October, and by spring beginning to break, it stopped.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it was got bored or migrated on or whatever. But there's tons of food in that area, tons of water. So there's even a fruit farm with a fence around it that's 8.5, 9 feet tall. I'm thinking, well, I don't know why that's up, but yeah, that's not going to stop anything. If somebody wants to get in there, that's not going to stop anything. And I thought that was kind of bizarre, which that fruit farm is maybe 5 miles from where Jeff and his wife lived, where Julie went out and checked it out. So, which is only about 10 miles from where I live now. I don't live in the apartment anymore, but I wish I did. But so yeah, I mean, I guess there's more Squatch in Ohio than I ever gave credit for.
Yeah, there sure is. I sure miss having the opportunity to go out there and just have the chance of maybe having lightning strike. But
right.
Oh, Ed, before I let you go, would you mind talking about the experiment that you mentioned in Hocking Hills?
Yeah. Ed got a little foolish this particular night, and he's probably lucky to live to tell the tale. This was designed as just a weekend getaway. I said something about wanting to go camping for the first time in forever. The wife thought it was a great idea, so me and her just decided to go do it. I told her, I was like, okay, go ahead, find the place. I would like to go down to the Hocking Hills region. She said, I told her, I said, go ahead, find a place. So she found a nice primitive campsite down there that, and of course, you've been to Hocking Hills, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, it's very touristy. They got caves down there. They got all kinds of stuff that just bring people out of the woodwork for obvious reasons. From our campsite, there was a path that went down to one of the caves. We walked it pretty far during the day just to kind of get a feel for the path. As you walk down the path, on the left side is looked to me like to be a very deep thicket, and it ran the whole length of the path on the left side as you were entering. On the right side was an open area that was kind of elevated. It went up maybe 5 or 6 feet, but it was wide open. I wish when we go back next summer, we're going to take a week this time. I wish I'd have gone up there because there was a couple tree bends that struck me as odd. They weren't but maybe 15 or 20 feet apart, but looked like one was bent over to the other one, and then it was bent over. And I was like, that's just bizarre. They weren't broken. They were just bent. They're just kind of bowed over. It's like, okay. We walked down this path as far as we could. It ended up coming to a gully that went up or down and then back up. And the wife thought she would have trouble navigating that. So we turned around and came back and decided that we're going to go down that path at night, that night. And, about 12:30, 1 o'clock. Now, like I said, it's a camping trip. So not that I was necessarily drinking heavily, but I did have a few beers. So we started down this path, and no sooner than we got in, we heard, we might have been 80 feet, 100 feet, maybe a little further down this path. And we heard grunts and snorts off to our left at our feet in this thicket. The wife had a flashlight. I just had a little low light tent lantern, just enough to see where I was walking. And so I gave her the brighter thing for obvious reasons. But we heard these grunts and snorts at our feet. I immediately thought deer. That's just where my brain went. She heard it, I heard it. It was literally right there. But we got down a little further, and she shined the light out into this thicket, and something moved. And again, I thought deer, but it only moved about 10 or 15 feet and stopped again. You could hear it. It was big. So I thought maybe a deer was going to be crashing through there. But when it stopped, I was like, if it was a deer, it probably would have kept running. And then this is processing, later after we got off the path. I didn't really think about that at the time. So, we would walk up a ways and turn off the light and listen. Now, the thing about this path, though, Shannon, is this weekend was a full moon weekend, and there was not a cloud in the sky. But the canopy over this path was so thick that when you shut the light off, you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. It was just that dark. But we did that a few times. We got up to a certain point, and we shut the lights off. And I actually this time put my hand back onto my wife so she knew I was there. And I never ever once felt threatened, but something told me that we've probably gone far enough, and it's probably time to turn around and walk back. So I told my wife, I said, okay, we're going, walk normal, turn your light on, so you can see where you're going, walk normal, don't rush out of here. And she got up maybe 15 or 20 feet ahead of me. I kind of, slowed down a little bit and kept looking behind me. I didn't know if anything was back there. I was keeping an eye on it, best I could with that low light. And got up to a certain point, and I decided that I needed to take care of a little personal business. So I proceeded to do so. And when I did, about 10 feet away from me, I heard a twig snap. And it was like, something possibly stood up. I got their attention. And about this time, where the wife was, she got one of those guttural growls that literally went right through her. She's like, oh my God. I was like, yeah, I know what that is. I felt that. And she talked about that for 2 days. She's like, that was wild. I even told whatever it was that broke that twig, we're going. We're taking off. No worries. No sound, just that twig snap. It was like, oh shit. That was probably not the smartest thing to do right there, Ed. You've read the stories. You know what happens. Hunters chased out of woods. The hell are you doing?
Did you hear the growl at all?
Huh?
Did you catch that growl at all?
No, she was further up. She kept walking, and of course, I stopped to take care of my business. So at this point, she might have been 30 yards up in front of me, maybe a little more. But she wasn't far enough up where I couldn't keep an eye on her and kind of glance back every once in a while. Yeah, that growl, that guttural growl, came almost from the same place that we heard the grunts and snorts as we were coming in. We were almost out of the off the path. And I was like, wow, that, I didn't hear it, but she told me. I was like, yeah, that's intense. She's like, yep. And she was like, yeah, we're going back. I was like, okay, all right.
She had enough of that.
If you're
She's
good
like,
with
hey,
it.
thanks for the nighttime walk, Ed, but it's time to go back to camp.
You basically, yeah, that's what it was saying. You shouldn't be out here, boy. Go on, you're out of your element. But yeah, it was rather intense. But I'm going to be a little more prepared next time with some thermal equipment. Just different things, and be a little more wary of my surroundings instead of just going in there kind of half willy-nilly, just wondering. Now I know something's in there.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing.
Something's definitely in there.
That's the beautiful thing about a thermal is you can instantly, in most cases, tell exactly what's going on. It's a raccoon, it's a deer, it's a person. Oh, it was just a leaf being really loud because, it gets dark, your mind plays tricks on you.
But yeah, when I heard that twig break, that was, literally, 10 feet, maybe less. I don't know for sure. But, yeah, I was like, okay, so we were being paced out of here. Right. And now, yeah, it's time to go.
Let's take a for instance, and let's put you there when it's still light out, okay? And you did the same thing. You had to stop, do your business. The wife is, 30 yards up. Do you really think that, because it sounds like you're going to get thermal equipment, you're going to go back out, you're all into this, which, hey, I can't blame you. I'm just as addicted as you are. But you've heard me ask people this. Within 10 feet, would you want to see a Bigfoot that close? The face, the whole thing, something that large, and depending on if it's the gorilla type or the human-looking type, what's your mindset on that kind of a sighting?
Well, people never took me as the smartest man in the world. So, yeah, I want to run the full gambit. I want to look into the eyes. We'll see what happens after that, And like you've always talked about, adult diapers might be appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I want the full gambit, and we'll see what happens after that. But it's weird though, even after I was doing what I was doing, and I think, and this is speculation on my part with this too, because that area is so touristy, they expect people. Maybe not in the middle of the night, but they expect people. It's just something they've, that's just part of their world. And we invade it on a daily. But I think us going out there in the middle of the night maybe kind of took them off their game a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that's why they were saying, during the day it's fine. You just go get some sleep.
What month was that, Ed?
Huh?
What month was that? Do you remember?
July.
July. Okay.
It was actually our anniversary month, and we decided to take a weekend camping trip. So yeah, it was right smack dab in the middle of July.
Well, I'll tell you what, you keep going on the treks that you do, and it seems like you have fairly decent luck so far. Get back in touch with me because I want to know if you have regretted saying, yes, I want the full within 10 feet. I don't care what face it has. I don't care how big it is. But hey, I'm in the same boat. I always have been. Everyone's like, be careful what you wish for. And I'm like, I wish for it. I really, really do. I want that confirmation.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, I'll die a happy man. And hell, I may die that night. But, yeah,
We'll know before we go. That's all that matters, right, Ed?
Right. But yeah, it was an intense walk down that path. But next time I'm going to be a little more prepared and a little less careless. I probably shouldn't have done what I'd done, but
yeah, I was just gonna say, you just got to be careful where you take a pee. That's all, because we've heard a lot of bad things happen when you gents decide to piss, just wherever. Sometimes you got to go. But I mean, just saying here.
Well, and when I told her that it was time to go, like I said, we never ever felt threatened, but I just got the sense that, we should probably just take our happy asses back to the tent.
Well, and something interesting that you said was you actually told her out loud, just walk calm. We're not going to scooch out of here any faster than we came in, just to stay calm. Like you just had the feeling that you needed to say that to her.
Yeah. I felt like we didn't dare go any further. I don't know. Call it a sixth sense that particular night. But yeah, it was time.
Oh yeah, in Hocking Hills. I mean, that's a great spot. Anybody that's been in Bigfoot long enough has heard other encounters out of Hocking Hills, so they definitely like that spot. I mean, humans and Bigfoot alike, they like Hocking Hills. It's a great spot, and like you said, it does have some flat areas. It's got ravines and gullies or hollers, as they might say in another part of the country, and tons of water, and a lot of cover there for whatever might be in there. So,
and that was our first trip to Hocking Hills, and now it's not going to be our last. So.
No, man, you got to get back out there.
Absolutely.
Maybe you're sending out those biggie vibes, and they can pick up on that. It seems like some people just have that. I never did. A couple times something came in, but it's a lot like some of your stories where you're like, hey, I'm not saying it's Bigfoot for sure. I'm just saying it's weird. Make of it what you will. Right. So, but it's enough to get you hooked. That's for sure. It's enough.
I'm so grateful to Julie to just say, go out and do something back there. You never know.
It's worth a shot.
And lo and behold, I got a quick ghost story if you want to hear it too.
Yeah, do it up.
When I was a teenager, I lived in a tiny little town of all of 250 people. It's still in Clark County. So, as a 13 and 14-year-old kid in the middle of summer in a town that size, there was a little bit of illegal drinking going on. But there was a group of us. It was hot as hell this particular night. So there were a lot of people just out. It was before the days that AC was in everybody's house. So there was a lot of people just out because they couldn't sleep. There might have been 7, 8, 9 of us at this point, and we just kind of meandered our way up to the old cemetery there just outside of town. We really weren't doing anything, but somehow or another somebody managed to bump one of the tombstones, and it was an old the granite tombstones that was actually a 2-piece back from the late 1800s, and the top part got knocked off, and this top part was probably maybe 8 inches square at the bottom and about 4 foot long. So it was heavy. It was definitely heavy. There was only 3 males at that time, me and another teenager and an older gentleman. We were trying to do the right thing. I was like, man, we can't leave this thing laying here. We'll at least let's try. So we grabbed onto it and really couldn't get it to budge. We was like, all right, one more time. Grabbed onto it. We got it to move a little, but no. And the older guy says, we're going to do this one more time. If we can't get it up there, then we're done. And I was like, all right, let's see what happens. So we grabbed a hold of it, and that thing got light, that fast, upright, onto the top. Everybody standing around going, what the F was that? What the F just happened? It was just like, whoa, it's time to get out of the cemetery tonight, folks. Let's go.
You guys just got the best assist in the world, the supernatural assist.
Right.
So you couldn't even barely budge it at first, the first couple times.
No, it was heavy, probably several hundred pounds. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, when we were going to give up, we tried, it was our fault that it was down.
Yeah.
We were trying to correct it. If we don't get it up, we're, whatever at this point. we'll fess up to it later if we have to. But that third time, it's just like, okay, all right. I all of a sudden got tired. I'm going home now.
That is, that's such a cool story. That really is. That's very unique.
Yeah, that was my one and only ghost story. And I just happened to think about that today. I was like, I need to tell her that.
That's pretty damn cool. So it's like the tombstone turned into one of the fake ones that you put in your front yard, right? The styrofoam ones.
Basically, yeah. Just that quick. It was styrofoam or plastic or whatever. It was a Halloween decoration at that point.
That's cool. See, there's something said for trying to do the right thing.
Yeah, basically.
Except it scared the shit out of you.
Yeah, it did. It did. Everybody was standing there looking around. It was like, how and why? But, that's the only explanation we'd come up with was, we did it and we're trying to fix it. And whatever helped us knew that, we probably shouldn't have been there, but it was probably a grandma, probably a grandma spirit. Y'all shouldn't have been here. I'll take care of it. And
don't worry, boys. Your heart's in the right place. Let me just help you out.
Let me get you some cookies.
Yeah, cookies with your underage drinking. Those go well together, sure.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Well, no, thanks so much,
beer,
Ed.
Chocolate chip cookies.
Oh, yeah, it turns my tummy just thinking about that one. Well, hey, man, thanks for working all day and then hopping on the phone with me, like literally having to hold the damn phone to your ear. I apologize for that, but it's all in the name of audio quality. I appreciate you.
No worries. I'm glad to do it. When I thought I was wanting to share my story, I could have knocked on other doors, but you're so personable in your interviews, and I just love the way you approach it. And it was like, hell, I'm telling my story to Shannon. I'm just doing it.
Well, thanks, Ed. That means, to put it not lightly, a shit ton. Really, it does. Thank you so much.
No problem. And it was sincere. I love listening to your podcast. I took some time away from podcasts because of my work situation at the time, but now I'm getting back into it and I'm getting caught up. And I actually heard you being interviewed on the Judge's show.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, From the Shadows. That was fun.
And that got me to listen to two stories because of the one you shared was Robert.
Very screwed up story. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll get you.
Oh my God, that was intense.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard the voice. I heard it. I knew it was coming, and I turned the radio up, and wow.
Right? It just sounds clear as day. And I don't even like EVPs. I don't even like most. I'm like, turn it off. I'm not interested. But that was weird. That was really weird, especially the timing of what I asked and what was found in the recording later. Very strange.
Yeah, I even backed it up. I was like, I got to hear it again. And it was like, oh, damn. So, yeah, Robert's following the poor kid.
Yeah, it would seem as such. I still want to meet Robert. I want to see a Bigfoot, and I want to meet Robert. Those are my two big things since starting this show. Well, no, the Bigfoot's been a long time, but Robert is on my list officially now.
Robert would be interesting as long as he doesn't attach himself to you like you apparently did this kid. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But, that was intense. And then, of course, I had to listen to the judge's accounts of his dogman story, which, where he isn't necessarily all that far from me.
No, it's
not. But that's
not.
something Julie warned me about when I was going to go into the woods by myself. She says, there are dogmen out there. I'm like, dogman? What the F is a dogman? I never even heard that term before. She's like, well, you just be careful. And I was like, okay. And I never really started to even bother to search it out. It was just like, okay, apparently it's another cryptid that, I should watch out for. And apparently it has a nasty attitude. And of course, with all the stories I'm hearing, yeah, they're pissed off all the time.
Yeah, they're buttheads.
Totally.
They're big old buttheads, always pissed off, supposedly. Just, yeah.
But yeah, that was it was an interesting encounter. You know, some of those Dogman stories, you know, folks are lucky to be alive. They really are.
Most of the Dogman stories, I'm like, I think I'm good on those. They don't usually turn out so well, and a lot of times people don't go back in the woods. And see, that's the encounter that you don't want. Is that it changes something that you used to love to do is now completely tainted forever. Because once you see that and experience it, you can't undo that.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I don't want that either. That's a big old bag of nope out of me.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's the no list, and Bigfoot stays on the hell yeah list.
Yep. Still got to see that face. Still got to see that face.
Within 10 feet, you got to email me back. No, you got to email me back anyway, but I'm just saying. You're the one that said I even said within 10 feet. You're like, yep. I'm like, okay. All right.
Yeah, it was literally just off. Like I said, I had a low light source. Anyway.
Oh, no, I'm talking about the hypothetical one. I was talking about the hypothetical that you wanted to see one. Even within 10 feet, and you said yes. So,
yeah.
I don't blame you.
Definitely.
I don't blame you a bit, man.
As long as it lets me live and walk out of the woods, and I don't upset it, I'm not going to urinate on its property anymore. I'm sorry. Yeah, I want that experience.
I'm pulling for you, that's for sure, because you may be in that Clark County, but I'm in this one, and I have a far less chance of seeing a Bigfoot at this point. So, yeah, please get back with me.
Well, you have a better chance of seeing Robert in your Clark County than you do.
Oh, there's Roberts everywhere here, dude. I'm just looking for that specific one. I got a lot of Roberts, but I want that one that made an appearance on my show.
Yeah. And I noticed just before he said vampire or something said vampire, there was another noise.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a wisp in.
Yep.
And then it paused for 3 or 4 seconds, and then I'm a vampire. Like,
I know, and it kills me because I can't clean that up or bring that up enough to even try to decipher that. So that just kind of goes by the wayside, you know. But yeah, you're right. There was something before that. Hey, at least we got the vampire thing, right?
Right. That definitely got my attention, but I already knew it was coming, and it was like, okay, all right, I definitely got to check out this episode now. So I specifically, searched it out as soon as I got done listening to you and Judge and his voice. I was like, holy hell.
Well, yeah, man. First of all, of course, thanks for listening. That's awesome. After all these years, I'm still like, people are still listening to me. Holy crap. And for writing me and for being like, hey, I want to come on your show.
Thank you so much for listening to me. You'll definitely be the first one if I get any more happenings going on. So
awesome. Thanks, man. Well, hey, be safe out there. Be safe driving, all right?
All right. Thank you very much.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. else. They will say, no, we don't believe literally in reincarnation. That after your funeral, you will suddenly become somebody different, living somewhere else. They will say reincarnation means this, that if you sitting here now are really convinced that you're the same person who walked in at the door half an hour ago, you're being reincarnated. If you are liberated, you will understand that you're not. The past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist. There is only the present. That's the only real you that there is. The Zen master Dogen put it in this way. He said, spring does not become the summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. When you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.